So, northwest coast of Africa and the Canary Islands we see up here. Here are the Canaries. Like there's Tenerife right there. There's El Hierro, right? And up here to the northwest would be the Azores, right?
Yeah.
Now, the area we're interested in is along the coast of Africa right here. And this is showing the little inset is showing right where we're looking at. And these are turbidity flow pathways. And all of these are massive landslides off the west coast of Africa that were swept out to the sea. And I think the easiest way to explain this, again, is if you picture massive tsunamis washing ashore, then sweeping back out seaward and bringing all of this material with them and spreading it out over the ocean floor. And so all of these lines here, as it says, turbidity flow pathways. These are, again, massive landslides that we see on the northwestern slope of Africa, which again is consistent with what we're talking about here is, I think, the combined effects of seismic activity, seismic shaking, and then the accompanying tsunami waves, I think could go a long way towards explaining these huge events. Not always. I mean, you might have explosive volcanism that cause, because I mean, look at Mount St. Helens there. You have a huge flank failure on Mount St. Helens that was a consequence of the big eruption in May of 1980. The point is, though, with the deglaciation and the destabilization of the continental crust that would be associated with that, not only would you have likely seismic activity on a grand scale, you would also have volcanic activity on a very large scale. And so if you had volcanic eruptions at the same time, that would be consistent with, you know, terminal ice age catastrophe.
So those flank failures that you were just showing us there were off of the continental shelf, right? So that was before the sea levels had risen up. I mean, because the green was the actual landmass.
Yeah.
You know, it was like far away from where those slides appeared to be starting from.
Yeah. Let me go on to the next paper here. This was a paper from the journal Sedimentololgy. This was published in 1991. You have to bear in mind a lot of these dates on these papers is back when I was really studying this stuff in depth. So again, I haven't kept up with all of the latest research on the dating and so forth, but perhaps in the next week or two I could delve into the literature and try to get a better handle on some of the more recent stuff, like in the last decade. But this is very interesting here. So turbidity current, now remember, turbidity current is going to be these highly turbulent currents that are densely laden with sediment that are sweeping across the ocean floor, right? They're almost like massive turbulent underwater rivers. Okay, so we've got turbidity current deposition on the abyssal plain and low-lying continental rise appears to be related to distinct sliding events involving transport of material from various sources. There is a strong correlation between these and thick turbidites on the abyssal plain, suggesting that the same turbidity current events occurring, now get this, about once every 25,000 years, gave rise to both set of deposits. The turbidites occur at glacial interglacial transitions, suggesting that the slides that created them were triggered by mechanisms related to glacial interglacial climate change. What'd you come up with for turbidity?
A swift downhill current in water, air, or other fluid triggered by the weight of suspended materials such as silt.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So then we have, going even back to 1979, this was also appeared in the journal Marine Geology, Surficial Slides and Slumps on the Continental Slope and Rise of Southwest Africa, a reconnaissance study. Off West Africa, a large slide and a large slump have displaced about 250 cubic kilometers of surficial sediment from the lower continental slope onto the upper continental rise. The slide and slump scars together cover an area of about 6,000 square kilometers. A debris flow extends about 250 kilometers downslope from the slide scar, and deformed sediments extend a similar distance downslope from the slump scar. And here's what's interesting. Apparently, the slide and the slump were triggered during the late Pleistocene, which again could be right there at the glacial interglacial transition.
In the early days of Atlantis research from the late 19th century up until the 1970s, most researchers put the location in the mid-Atlantic Ocean in the area of the Azores Islands, which was considered to be the most consistent with Plato's geography as expressed in his two dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, and as expressed in the aforementioned quote. However, in the 1970s, a number of geologists set out to examine the plausibility of an Atlantic location for Atlantis and concluded that there was no evidence for any sizable sunken landmass that could ever have satisfied Plato's criteria, and therefore dismissed his account as mere fable, or perhaps a political allegory, but not a real place. In the aftermath of this declaration of implausibility for a mid-Atlantic location by scientific authorities, most researchers then looked elsewhere, finding similarities in literally dozens of other locations, as I explained, but only after abandoning or altering Plato's precise description and details. With so many conflicting interpretations, a serious researcher might conclude that the problem is hopelessly intractable and not worthy of scientific scrutiny. On the other hand, I would suggest that the scientific dismissal of a mid-Atlantic location was premature, and the subsequent tangents embarked upon by researchers only muddied the waters and threw the quest for Atlantis, if it existed, off track. I am arguing that it is time to go back to the source and examine to what extent Plato's precise details might be supported or refuted by modern scientific knowledge. I have covered much of this material in my Kosmographia podcasts, but there is more to be said. And the goal with this live stream is to provide a succinct and condensed interpretation of Plato's remarkable story in the light of modern scientific knowledge, and perhaps to lay the groundwork for an upcoming expedition